Okay, the part you're going to need is the AC Delco, and then it's 3637030. Here's a picture of the power steering loop cooler. This is on the return side of the hydraulic pump. So let's go out and take a look at the actual sample. Okay, so for some perspective, this is the front kind of rock guard right here. Then here is a plastic radiator support right there. And then right there, coming towards you, is the power steering cooler loop. This is very common on many GM 3400 vehicles, including the 3400 equipped Venture, Montana, and Oldsmobile Silhouette. This is the removed power steering cooler loop from the Oldsmobile Silhouette. Okay, for starters, this is a little different from the part that was ordered. First and foremost, this long section here is completely straight. The so-called replacement for this particular part number is not quite straight up there. In fact, has a couple of small bends, one here and one here, but it's not something that's really a deal breaker. Okay, back here, the other difference is that this bend right here goes straight up, and this actually has a loop, or excuse me, a fitting, and then a rubber hose goes up towards the return side of the power steering pump. The other difference is that when you order that complete part, you get this line portion of the line right here. This hooks into this portion right here, the flat part, and you get this fitting here, and this goes right into the power steering pump. I elected to cut this off. You can see right there was an Oetiker or ear clamp right there that I simply just cut off, and elected to reuse this portion of what was underneath the car. The one really big difference is, see how this is coming straight up, is this particular part of the hose here. If you can imagine that the replacement part was coming at a 45-degree angle, I literally just took it and hand bent it over quite carefully because I didn't want to kink or otherwise damage the power steering loop. In a previous segment, I misstated something. This particular end of the power steering return loop goes to the power steering rack. And I also wanted to clarify a couple of other things. This segment that comes with that cooling loop and this rubber hose has the ear clamps, and these are pretty small, and they can just cut off with a side cutter of some sort or whatever. But on the rubber hose that's underneath the vehicle, there are long swage type fittings that are about 3/4 of an inch, and what I did to remove them is I very carefully took a grinder and just ground up and down the sides of them until I just ground through the metal, and then I turned the fitting about halfway around so that I could grind on the other side just up and down until the metal was weak enough or just totally gone, so that I could separate them like a clamshell. It takes a little time, but you can save the hose if you're careful. The reason I elected to do that is because reaching up to the power steering rack and trying to get this particular fitting off up in there would require likely removing the rack, plus this particular section of hard tubing going up to the rack was in good shape and didn't need to be replaced. Okay, so how was it actually repaired? I'm not going to get back under the car and show it, but I'll just go through each of the different pieces that you had to remove or otherwise unfasten. Up here on the front of the cooling loop, about right here, and about right here are two plastic clips, and they are shaped like a W rounded out that just kind of hold the tubing. And you just literally just push those out and unclip the tubing from it. No tools are required. Coming along here, there's another clip under the engine support about here. Again, it's another plastic clip. You just pull it out, and then about there is a 9 millimeter metal fastener that has two loops and then has a 9 millimeter screw. And back here, what I did to remove it is I took a grinder and I ground off the two metal fittings until they just fell off of the rubber. I was very careful not to go too deep on the rubber tubing. So if you can imagine, this is the size of the rubber tubing. As long as you grind off those two metal fittings underneath the vehicle, you literally can just separate it then with either a screwdriver. If you have a fancy hose plier, then that's a good way to disassemble it. So the installation is reversive removal, as they say. Okay, so what's the price of that power steering return hose? This is an online order. It was about $32.70 with shipping to my house.